got one more person coming. He's going to show up eventually. But while the rest of us are here, I guess we'll get it kicked off. So our topic is around the missing key in building next-gen Web3 games. And I have an amazing panel here with me. My name is Richard, and I am the co-host of the Edge of NFT, one of the top podcasts in the country, in the world. And I'm here with this amazing panel, and I want everybody to introduce themselves really quickly.
Hi, my name is Vincent from the DAR Open Network. We are a gaming platform. Originally, we were a play-to-earn game listed on Binance roughly 2 years ago. Right now, we've pivoted to a open platform, open gaming community. And what we're focused on is chain abstraction and account abstraction. And we want to create a great community, and also want to make sure these users can easily onboard Web3 games and check out Web3 games.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi guys, I'm Wu. I'm one of the co-founders at TallyUp that is building, I think, one of the most kind of important consumer gaming apps in crypto and in Web3. Yeah, and we believe it's one of the only kind of Web3 game economies that is sustainable. It doesn't rely on unsustainable Ponzinomics. Yeah, it's on the App Store and the Play Store. We have a booth upstairs, so please come check us out.
What is up, Korea? I am Yellow Panther, a content creator and advisor, as well as an angel investor right now, mostly for Web3 gaming. I'm also an advisor and ambassador for Mochaverse and Pirate Nation, Carve, and a few others. So I'm just super happy to be here on a panel with so many legends here. So let's just have a really good discussion and see how we can help Web3 gaming as an industry move forward.
Hey, GM. Michael. I'm formerly of Activision Blizzard, where I launched 5 games, everything from Overwatch 2 to Modern Warfare 2, and lastly, Diablo 4. And then now kind of teaming up with Luca, Saigar, a bunch of folks to create the consumer crypto chain Abstract.
Excellent. Well, as y'all can hear, we have an amazing panel here, and I'm going to ask some hard questions. Because we have a pretty interesting topic, which is the missing key to building the next-gen Web3 games. And I believe that revolves around 4 key topics. The first being user experience, the second, technology and infrastructure, third, game design and economics, and then fourth, industry adoption and integration. So I want to start with user experience. So to kick this off, let's talk about how Web3 games can improve their onboarding process to make it more accessible to the traditional Web2 crowd. And whoever wants to take it first.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect question, because DAR Open Network, we're basically trying to solve problems. How can we enable Web3 games to have the same usability experience as a Web2 game? I mean, it sounds very simple, right? Hey, Web2 games, Web3 games, it's not that hard. But when it comes to blockchain, everything's a lot more complicated. So I think to solve that problem, you just have to make sure users are playing a Web3 game without even knowing they're playing a Web3 game. They would just be playing it and realize, oh, it's a Web3 game. It's like we're using Facebook right now. No one out there cares about the back-end infrastructure servers. You're just using the social media app, right? So I think user experience, how can you make it the same as like a Web2 game? I think that's the key.
Yeah, I mean, I can chime in. I think user experience and the whole process needs to be more thoughtful, right? Like, for example, Pudgy World, right? They have this toy, and they have to scan it, and then it will directly bring them into the game. You only need an email or something like that to just directly play the game. So it's as seamless as it seemed, but like back in 2021, that was a whole issue. Everyone had issue with onboarding and stuff like that. But right now in 2024, it has been solved and a lot more seamless. And in the overall user experience, I think that much more thought need to be in these things, because as a gamer perspective, whenever we play games, we want to just dive into the world, into the game as deep as you can, right? But a lot of these games have not thought about the UI, UX, and it's very complicated. And if there's too many clicks, more often than not, they will not be, dove in. They will just like click away. And the attention nowadays for Gen Z and Gen Alpha is really, really short, right? So you have to have lesser clicks, have a more seamless UI, and overall experience has to be amazing. So that's why I say the thought need to be there for the next generation.
I agree, and I actually want to chop this up to both Michael and William for the second half of this question, which is around user experience and the pain points. So there's a lot of pain points that are still in Web3 that we're trying to alleviate. Like you said, the extra clicks, everything else, to make that transition a little bit more seamless. What are some of the things that both of you are working on to make that happen?
At TallyUp, we recently just finished integrating with Aptos, and one of the newer kind of like wallet tech that they've developed is a technology called keyless. And so when users sign up in TallyUp, you download the app, and just like TikTok or any other modern Web2 app, you simply press continue with Google. There's no sign up, there's no sign in, there's no creating an account. It's continue with Google, continue with Apple, and then on the back end, a keyless account is created on the Aptos chain. An on-chain player identity is created, but none of those things are enforced on the users. They are happening on the back end, and if the users want to learn more, they have the ability to opt into complexity, but you don't have to understand that to use it. In the same way where you don't need to understand how to drive, like how the car works or engines work in order for you to benefit and drive a car. So we think like as the technology becomes more and more robust and more mature, it should fade away into the background. And it should no longer be like, you got to connect your wallet, you got to sign a message. I think that's definitely like last cycle stuff, and I think this cycle it's definitely about like, you know, getting as close to like the really seamless Web2 user experience, because as YP said, every single click, there's probably like 5 to 10% drop off in your funnel. Every single thing you make the user do more or have to understand more, there's more drop off. So it's about minimizing that. Web2 apps have it, and I think we're very close with Web3 apps and games. Yeah.
No, it's coming from Activision Blizzard and as well as like the Ethereum seed round and working on ETH 2.0 for folks that remember what that was. My personal thesis is that Web3 games will be the killer app for crypto. Because right now, there is no killer app, right? Like, there's like a bit of product market fit with, you know, DeFi, but that's really just like 5,000 degens just wash trading tokens. So like, if you think about like a killer app, it's like, if built beautifully, what can launch to 1 million MAUs and then scale up to 10 million users? It's a game, right? It's like you saw this with mobile. The problem right now is that if you earnestly believe that Web3 games is gonna take off, it's all gaming is all based on business models. So if you look at whether it's desktop gaming and console, that was the pay-to-play model, right? I pay $80, I get to play Diablo 4, or subscription model, I get to play Warcraft. And then all of a sudden, when you switch over to mobile, the way that took off was a new business model, free-to-play. But in order for free-to-play to work, you had to optimize the shit out of your funnel, right? You have to have 100 million people top of funnel, and then a lot of these games that are spitting out like Candy Crush, $1 billion a year, that's off of like a 1 to 3% conversion rate of pay to free players. I think what you have now with Web3 is that you have all the infrastructure, all the primitives. What you lack right now is the business model. Like, what makes Web3 gaming unique for a player community that you don't get from desktop, console, mobile? And then on the studio side, what is that business model that makes it unique to me where it makes it sustainable? That I've not seen yet. You saw a little bit of that last cycle with like, pay to earn or play to earn, which I thought was really interesting because like a business model to do well, you need two things. You need to bring in a net new community of players, and they did bring that. Like whether it's like gamblers or workers, it was a net new audience, right? And then the second part is it has to be sustainable, and that part didn't really deliver that last cycle. So whoever figures that out, new business model that brings in new players into the community and is a sustainable business model, literally you're going to trip over $1 billion.
Oh, I agree. And actually, we skipped. But you going into that answer goes into like the next like topic I was going to go into, which is game design and economies. And you're speaking to whoever can figure that out, like how that's going to the business model side of things. But I want to open this up to more than that. It's just how do we make this in-game economies scalable for all of those in Web3 who are here for the play to earn and to have some sort of rewards come around, and also for the developers that are building this to be incentivized to stick around?
I think with kind of like sustainable token economy, there needs to be a reason why people want to buy, right? There needs to be demand for the game. Just like in Web 2, if the game experience is not appealing or there's no reason for users to make an in-app purchase, that game as a business is going to die. And I think, like whether you flow that through equity and shareholders or whether you flow that through token holders, it's all just, it's the same thing. In Web3 and with tokens, you have investors, you have you have holders of the tokens that are looking to liquidate, and that means that like there needs to be something that like the truth is that there will be sell pressure from internal cap table, whether that's foundation looking for runway, whether that's investors realizing returns. There needs to be like something to offset that, and so you need to generate demand, and that I think comes from the game experience. In the more traditional model, that would be something like selling number of titles of like Black Mystery Wukong, which is really big right now. So like it just has to like offset like for it to be sustainable. And if the token economy relies on a certain amount of inflow of users, similar to Axie, to offset some kind of hyperinflation or token inflation, that reliance on a certain market condition is inherently unsustainable and inherently fragile. And that's just designed to break, because like markets are irrational and unpredictable, so you cannot design a tokenomics that relies on a certain market condition to be true. I think that's very important.
I just want to add, because this is a very interesting question, like sustainability and economies, right? I played old school RuneScape for more than 20 years now, right? And people are still selling gold in the black market and stuff like that. I want to speak from the player's perspective, because I don't know, these things are too complicated for me to understand. I'm an econ major, but I just want to play games, right? And you see, when it comes to gaming in general, incentive alignment for Web3 gaming is the utmost important, in my opinion. You have to show the players the potential, and why do you want them to give their attention to you, and why should they play your game? As as Web3 games, there is not many games are doing that right now. That's why why Axie was so blew up, right? Is because there was a narrative and they gave the players a reason to play. Like just what Abstract Chain was just saying just now. They paint a picture that you play and you're able to earn, right? It's just like everyone work and they get paid, right? It's normal. But to paint a picture where your childhood dream is to play games and make money, that is something that attracted a lot of gamers, right? So I think incentive alignment and telling the players and painting the pictures to them is very important. But to be honest, not many Web3 games understand how to market it to the Web3 gamers. But there are a lot of Web3 games are actually actively pushing and marketing to the Web2 gamers. But I told them like Web3 element is very important, right? What makes you different is the Web3 element.
I agree. And as a follow-up to that for both Michael and Vincent, one of the things I was curious about was like, what are the innovative game mechanics that Web3 does have to offer that Web2 doesn't, that gives it its unique balance of why people want to come over into this, Web3? Obviously, you have tokens, obviously, you have NFTs, but like, what is that real game changer that blockchain truly allows from an innovation standpoint to bring people over and keep them?
Oh, that's a great question as well. Maybe to double click on what was being answered. I think RuneScape was a great prime example of how Web3 could really revolutionize it. So I think Web3, the things that could improve, I think one of the key values is, I think ownership is definitely one of them. But ownership, everybody talks about ownership. It's getting boring. But I think other than ownership, it's also about unlocking additional value from existing objects that just have not much value right now. I'm just going to use the RuneScape example again because I think it's a great example. So RuneScape is a very old MMORPG game, have been here for 20 years. And once in a while, they have like very rare items, which are only accessible per account. And some of these are even limited per person, like Soulbound. So one good example is called the party hat. So a very innocuous party hat. Everybody gets one for free. There's yellow, there's purple, there's red, there's pink, I think. And but it had no utility. And people thought, okay, it looks kind of stupid, no utility. I'll just throw it away. And eventually that happened. People just like threw it away because it wasn't like cool, it wasn't powerful. And eventually there was a very small number of party hats remaining on the server, and people starting, like they really wanted it, and it went like up to crazy amounts, like 5-digit US for like a hat that has no utility, that only has like aesthetic purposes. So imagine if Web3 comes in, okay, I own this asset, if I want to trade it, I could do that. If someone wants to borrow it, I could rent this NFT out, and somebody could use it for a month or so, and I can pretty much make sure that person returns it. He's not going to keep that because it's smart contracts, right? So I think there are a lot of things that you can do on that side. And but also one point I want to add was back to the tokenomics problem. I don't think there's a perfect solution here, but I think there are certain things that we can do to ensure that Web3 games would be more sustainable. I love that point about how markets up and down. You have to make sure when the markets are bad, it doesn't crash. So I think one thing is you're not trying to tokenize every single asset in a game. So Web3 game doesn't mean I want all my tokens, gold, weapons, all tokenized. I think only a certain part of that should be tokenized. And yeah, because if you tokenize everything when the market crashes, then the money's just going to leave the ecosystem. And the second point is you have to make sure you have create mechanisms that ensures the resources or the gold stays in the game rather than people just farm and sell, farm and sell, farm and sell. Because initially, when it first comes out, it's great. People feel good. Wow, 20%, 30%. But we know that short-term happiness is going to haunt you after 6 months and a year from now, where it's going to slowly crash. So I think these are some of like two quite important points when people could really like ponder on when they're creating these like Web3 gaming like tokenomics as well.
No, if you're building on crypto rails, there's every computing platform, whether it's cloud, mobile, containerization, or blockchain, there's like unique properties, right? So if I'm building on crypto rails, like there's 3 things that are unique to blockchain, and it's transparency, security, and then ultimately composability. And probably if I'm building a Web3 game, composability is the most interesting part, but it's not how most people think about composability. Like coming from like say Blizzard, that has everything from Warcraft to Overwatch to Starcraft to Diablo, you're not crossing all of these franchises, right? Like a top 1% player is like playing like 42 hours a week and then consuming another 24 hours of game-related content. Like you don't have time to traverse through all of these like worlds, right? So like that's the part where I think people get composability wrong with games, where it's like I'm not taking like my reputation from one game and artifacts and going to another game, because you just don't fundamentally have that. Your time is finite. What I think is composable across different games is your on-chain reputation. So like if I were to open source Call of Duty's like 250 million players, top 1%, if every other game studio knew who the top 1% Call of Duty players were, I can airdrop things to them. I can try to bring them into my community. All of a sudden now what you've done is you've open sourced every player to be a free agent. And then all of a sudden, I think there's unique things that happen. You'll have like essentially communities like forming, and then like sub-communities, and then like you have like people who kind of like, like groups of like influencers and streamers that just kind of like create like, a de facto like DAO or organization, and they just kind of move from game to game. And I think that's where like a lot of composability will happen at the community level.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and it comes back to like one of the questions that I brought up around the conversation around technology and infrastructure, just on how are we able to build and scale. So for some games, you want a good game. You just want something that people come back and play over and over again. And for some people, that's high graphics, right? So that's Unreal Engine 5. That's some of these like super high definition type of opportunities. For others, it is, I want to be able to play a game that I can play with a ton of friends all at the same time. So then you have the scalability side. So how is it for the projects that you all are working on that you're balancing both the scalability issue with the technology side of making sure that all your graphics look awesome on the blockchain that you're building?
I think developers have a lot of flexibility in terms of what they put on chain. You can put more stuff on chain. You can literally put every single game that's being played on chain, or you could put certain items on chain. So I believe that developers have a lot of flexibility in terms of where they want to deploy, what they want to integrate with, what they want to put on chain, and for what reason. It may be for you to farm on-chain KPIs, so you want to put every single thing on chain. It may be that you want to make something tradable, so you make your NFTs, tradable NFTs on chain, on a chain with lots of NFT traders. But I personally don't think that infrastructure is the bottleneck here for Web3 games. Yeah, so yeah.
I think ultimately the bottleneck is like people's like imaginations and their mindset, right? When you're thinking about graphics and all of these core features to what makes a great game, you've totally lost the plot. Like, go back to first principles. Why do people play games? Because it's fun, it's entertainment, and then there's a social element to it, right? Like, I came up as a Call of Duty like pro player. Like, I didn't play Call of Duty because like I wanted to go pro one day. Like, I played it because it was fucking fun, right? And then eventually I make friends on there, and there are better first-person shooter games like after 20 years, but people play because it's a social network, right? The same thing with Warcraft, and same thing with any like amazing franchise. Like, and even look at like the introduction of mobile games. This is like when the App Store first came out in 2008, 2010 was like the first mobile game that like it was Fruit Ninja, right? And then 2012 you saw things like Angry Birds and Candy Crush and like Clash. It's like the graphics were absolute trash, right? But what was it about those games? They were fun. And then all of a sudden you add a social element where you can share so people can compete, especially those early Facebook games like Mob Wars and like Farmville. And there's like a social element to it. It's like, who has a higher score, and then it gets super advanced where you can actually like play together, right? When the infrastructure catches up. But people forget about like the very basics of like it's entertainment, and you just want to like meet other people that eventually become your friends. Like some of my best friends growing up, I met on Warcraft.
I love this. The reason I just want to re-emphasize this is that I agree that people get lost in the sauce around like, oh, I need all of these things to have the ultimate game, and you don't. You just need a really good game. I offered up that question to see if like y'all absolutely like just disagreed with it, because I hear it a lot, but it sounds like y'all don't. But to kind of go into another direction with this, it's just, again, looking at how do we look at this into the future, right? So again, the missing key in building next-gen Web3 games. If you had to summarize in your head of like, where do we go into the future? Like, how do we keep making sure that what you're building is bringing on the next wave of gamers into Web3? What does that vision look like to you?
Yeah, like what Michael mentioned, I think you just have to go back to first principles. Like, why am I playing a game? And I've definitely tried out a lot of Web3 games, and I would say for most of my experience, it's just, even for me as like a Web3 veteran, there's so much friction. I just don't want to play that game anymore. So first, I mean, yes, first principles. You want to make sure it's a great game, it's fun. You can share the social aspects to it, but you also have to make sure on the infrastructure side, the experience side, the UI side, it has to be properly set up so people don't have that friction as well. So it's pretty much like fun, user experience. And one third point is you want to play a game, like you just talked about it, like Angry Birds, like you want to share with your friends, compete. There's a social element to it, which a lot of Web3 games don't have right now. So how can we integrate fun, good UX, UI, user experience, and social element into one perfect thing? So I think community is great as well, but I don't think in Web3 right now, the community has been fully developed in a way that's like Web2 games. So I haven't really seen like I mean, there are good, robust communities out there, but I don't see that for every single game. So I think if you want to, for future, if you want to be a gaming project, like for myself, I'm a gaming platform. Like you want to make sure there's good community, good social, good UX, good UI, and just fun games.
I feel like everybody is going to say build fun games, which is true. But I'm going to take a different angle and say that I think there's kind of a fundamental like incentives issue with a lot of Web3 games where for a lot of the games, the end goal is to launch the tokens rather than to actually make long-term revenue with the games. And actually, like it's potentially even more bullish for some games to never launch and never develop beyond a demo after the token generation. So I think it's just, like building a popular consumer app or a popular games title, it's also kind of like we just need a lot more games to actually launch their product and go out into the market and try to acquire users, like Web2 users, beyond just the 5 to 10,000 like speculator farmers that we have within Web3 games that are just rotating between different games. I think like, yeah, we just need more games to actually go the full mile instead of like stopping like, or somewhat kind of like, kind of like Star Atlas or something like that, like kind of stopping development post TGE and like once people cash out, like it just doesn't go further from there. We just need more games to actually go the full mile to try to develop something and actually launch the product, launch it in Steam, acquire users, and like get more players actually playing those games. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of the problem here is that it's an incentives issue. There's not enough games actually going the full mile. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I don't build games, I don't build platforms. But what I do is will be contributing to what these game platforms and games is needing, which is player liquidity as well as incentive alignment to the community. So I would, more often than not, I represent the gamers as well as the distribution for many other content creators. I share deal flow to the content creators and the communities. I share a lot of things to my community members and gamers as well. So I think what I'm building right now is Gaming Grid as well as 44 Labs. Is in the middle bit of both worlds, of the games and the gamers, as well as the games and the advisors, right? So 44 Labs, we are advising some of the top projects right now in the space. As well as Gaming Grid, we are actively working with, sorry, they like me, okay? We are actively working with many games to provide player liquidity, user acquisition, strategies, and much more. So I think I'm really enjoying this phase of growing and bringing in more players and introducing them to more games and more ecosystems. So I think in the near future, what we're lacking is really good games that, like I said, and I mentioned, games that understand what the gamer wants and what the gamer needs, and properly aligning the incentives to the Web3 gamers as well as the Web2 gamers. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Building a consumer crypto chain, we're providing two things for the gaming community. I think it's one, our Abstract's core mission is to build the world's largest on-chain community. I think if you're building a game or any type of service that cares to kind of prove the consumer thesis, crypto thesis, you want to deploy in the ecosystem that has the most on-chain users. And then the second part is like giving an example, and it's where Pudgy World is going to be on Abstract, and that's like a unique business model where you take a NFT collection. There's a physical toy item in Latte, in Target, in Walmart, QR code that takes you into an on-chain like open world, and then fractional sales of the toys and as well as the on-chain community go back to the NFT holders. And then the other thing, like if I were building a game right now, probably the thing that's going to shift, and this goes for Web 2 traditional games as well, the distributor is going to go from AAA gaming distributors to content creators and streamers. That's going to be the next distribution engine.
That's awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate all y'all's time. I want to have a few seconds. If anyone has any questions out there, we can ask those, and if not, we'll wrap up. Everybody good? All right. Well, thank y'all so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.